So today we're going to do the handover video on this Swift Escape 674. We're going to start on the outside and then we're going to move on to the inside. I'd like to begin the video by explaining the vehicle hasn't yet had a valet. I just wanted to get this video completed and out to you just before you collect. So if you can look past any dirt, that'd be much appreciated. So firstly, coming over to the passenger side, you'll notice behind this flap, you've got your diesel fill-up point, which is up at the top, and your AdBlue fill-up point, which is there. When your AdBlue is running low, you will get a little light that comes up on the dash just to indicate when that needs topping up. Opening up the passenger door, on the passenger door sill you'll notice that you've got your tyre pressures, which are just located there. And you'll also notice that you've got your bonnet release catch, which is here. I'll pull that to release the bonnet. Before moving round, on this motorhome you've got something called Remis cab blinds fitted. To operate these, all you'll need to do is simply pinch the little black tab and pull the blind out like so. Lead these from the bottom and let them connect up via the magnetic strip. You've got the same again on the large window, and of course another one of these blinds on the driver's side. For the window at the front, the same idea, simply pinch the clip and there's a magnetic strip that will connect into place when they meet into the middle. To push these back in, let them click in like so, and for the side windows, pull off the magnetic strip and lead from the bottom. If you lead from the top, sometimes the blind can get stuck and twisted, so I find that if you lead from the bottom like so, it will just allow the blind to slot into place a lot better. And once you've got it to this point, lift it up and connect in until you hear that click. Moving on from the cab and underneath the bonnet, if you ever need to jump start the vehicle, obviously lift the bonnet up and you can see that as indicated by this sticker here, you've got your negative terminal, which is just onto here, and your positive terminal is just located here, just onto this tab there. So that's how you jump start the vehicle. Just to point out a couple more things, you can see you've got your engine oil, which is down here, along with your dipstick, which is just below that. You've then got your brake disc fluid, your engine coolant, your power steering fluid is next to that, and finally in the corner you can see that you've got your washer fluid for the front windscreen. Moving around to the side of the motorhome, you can see that firstly you've got your hookup point for your 230 volt mains electric, so when you're on your campsite you can hook your mains lead into there and that will charge up your leisure battery as well as allow you to use any 230 volt appliance like your microwave or your 3-pin sockets on the inside of the motorhome. Next to that, under the next flap, you've got your fill-up point for your fresh water tank. Using one of the keys, you can unlock this cap, remove the cap, and using a food grade hose pipe, you can pop that into there. I'd recommend using a food grade hose pipe as it means there's no bacteria build up in the pipe which could ultimately be put in your tank. And then simply stick that in the tank, let that fill up, and when it's overflowing, you know that you've filled your tank. It's as simple as that. Now next to that, you've actually got a little 12 volt point here. So on certain sites you may have access to it's what's known as a smart site, and there may be a 12 volt pump that you can connect into here and lead that into a point on the site, which will allow you to, instead of filling up the fresh water tank, it will just take it straight from the fresh water supply on site and pump it into your van. So if you're wanting to do that, your 12 volt pump has been fitted on the outside of the motorhome here. For the majority of times, however, you will just be filling it up at the water station on the campsite and using a food grade hose pipe, which, as I mentioned, just goes into there. Underneath that, you've then got your first drain down points. So you've got your fresh drain down point and your waste water drain down point. As you can see, there's a sticker up here which just indicates which is which, but it's easy to know from the blue and obviously the grey tap. Now these are actually electric drain down points, so we can drain these on the inside of the motorhome. So the great thing is you don't need to go on your hands and knees and pull a lever. You simply click a button on the inside of the motorhome and that will drain down the tanks electrically. So it's dead easy, and I'll show you how you can do that. One thing to remember, however, with your fresh water tank and your wastewater tank is when you're not using the vehicle, always ensure that these tanks are drained down. In the summer months it doesn't matter as much, because if you do leave water in there, it's not really going to freeze, but especially you need to especially do it for obviously the colder months, because if you do leave water in there it could freeze and crack a tank, so just bear that in mind. On site you'll have a big grid that you can simply drive the vehicle over, line it up with the grid, and then like I mentioned, I'll jump in there, you just click a button and that will allow you to drain down your fresh and your wastewater drain down points. So it's nice and easy. Once you've drained down all the tanks, you can move to your you can move on either to your next site, or of course if you're going home you'll be good to do so. I'd recommend getting into the habit of draining that down each time, but as I say, it's not that necessary if you are using the vehicle when it is hot. Next up, you've then got your toilet cassette. I'll open that up for you now. And as you can see, your toilet cassette is just here. To empty this, all you need to do is pull up on the orange lever like so and slide the cassette out towards you. Now, before you remove the cassette, there's something called the blade on the toilet, which I'll show you where that is when we move on to the inside of the van. But that will allow you to open and close the cassette. Before you remove this, you need to always ensure that that blade is closed. If it is open and you go to remove this cassette, it can potentially get jammed. You'll actually feel it. It won't pull out nice and easy. It will actually get jammed and stuck. And what can happen is if you force that, you'll simply break the float on the inside of the van. So always make sure that the blade is always closed on the inside before removing the cassette. Now, providing you've done that, like I mentioned, it should actually slide out nice and easy, just like so. So pull that out, and on site there'll be a big grid again where you can dispose of the waste. To dispose of the waste, all you need to do is pull out the funnel, remove the green cap, and then you can see there's a little orange button on the bottom here, or on the back. Click that, and that will release an internal vacuum, allowing you to empty all the contents out of the cassette. It's nice and easy. Once you've done that, put a bit of water in here just to swill out the system, and then if you're using blue fluid to break down the waste on the inside, just take the cap. There's a little measurement on the outside of the cap, so put the fluid in directly into the cap. Don't put it down the toilet because it'll stain, so put it straight into the cassette through the cap, and then you can then put the cap back on, slide it into position, and then that cassette is good to go back in. Now, you will also notice that you've got this orange lever here. This actually turns, and this allows you to open and close the cassette. It's actually what makes contact with the blade. This should always stay in this position. There should be really no need for you to turn this. Always keep this in this position, because if that is off slightly and you go to put the cassette back into position, it won't go in right. So you need to ensure it's always that way round. So if it came out like that, you know, put it back in like that. It's as simple as. So once it's drained down, take your cassette, slide that into position, and let it connect into place. As you can see, that orange handle is nice and snug in there, and that cassette is steady. It's not going anywhere for when you're traveling. So directly next to the cassette, you can see that you've got your fridge vents. These are some Dometic fridge vents, and this is where the fridge pulls all of its air from to cool the fridge. Now, if it is a hot day, what I'd recommend is turning the van around out of the sun. Try and keep it under shade. That will just allow the fridge to run a little bit more efficiently. And you'll also notice on your fridge vents you've got these little clips here. Same again underneath here. So you can actually buy little winter covers that slot onto there for when you're storing the vehicle when it's quite cold. Moving to the back, as you can see on this black flap here, it says gas, and this is an external gas point. Now, I'll show you where your gas bottles go, but providing your gas bottles in and they are turned on, all you've got to do is connect your barbecue point to this. You may need a nozzle just to connect into this, and then using the orange lever, turn this, and that will release the gas to your barbecue, and you can use your external barbecue nice and easily. On the rear of the motorhome, you've got a Truma vent. This is for your boiler. It can get quite hot, that, so just give it a bit of a wide berth, but that is in essence the vehicle's chimney. So that's what that is. And then moving to the rear of the motorhome, you can see this particular van has got a tow bar on there, along with some rails for a bike rack should you need one in the future. And then right up at the top, you've got your reverse camera, which is just there. Moving round to the other side, you can see that you've got a little locker here which will gain you access to the storage. I'll open that up for you now. And as you can see, with that locker open, it gains you access to a little bit of storage space. Currently we've got your carpets in there, and we've also got your awning winder, which is just here for your awning on the side of the motorhome. Now, for the awning, which is on the side of the van, this is a Thule awning. I will send you a separate video showing you how to operate the awning. As you can imagine, I've only got the one hand in this video, so I'll send you a separate video showing you how that can work. Two main things to remember is if the awning is windy, if the awning is out and the conditions are windy, take the awning in, because if you get a sudden gust of wind, it could potentially pull the awning away from the vehicle, because it's in essence like a massive sail on the side of the van. So it could ruin and damage the vehicle, but also it could also damage you know, vehicles on the site. So if it's windy, take the awning in, it's not worth having out. Same thing goes for at night, because you never know when you're going to get a sudden gust of wind. And then also, if it is raining, although the awning can be used in rain, you do need to at some point take the awning out, perhaps when you have a dry day, just to air the awning out and obviously dry the canvas. You don't want to be storing the awning in when it's wet for a long period, because obviously it'll just lead to mould and it'll ruin the awning, so just bear that in mind. Now, coming back over, next up is your LPG locker. So this is where your gas bottles are located. And with your gas locker open, you can see you've got space for 2 bottles in here. You've actually got a pigtail supplied with the motorhome. As you can see, it's a little threaded insert here. This connects onto something called a regulator, which is this piece of metal, this piece of black plastic here. You can see there is a thread on the other side, so that will connect into here, and then this other side will then simply connect into your bottle. So you'll have your 2 bottles here, strap them down, and then connect the pigtail. And I can do that on the day if you bring some gas bottles with you, that's not a problem. Now, when you're travelling, you need to ensure that your gas bottles are turned off at the bottle. If you're travelling and your gas is on, it's obviously a massive risk, because obviously if you're involved in a crash, something could happen. It will then go up in flames, so just bear that in mind. So only have the gas on when you are stationary. And you do that simply by twisting the nozzle on top of the bottle. Lower down, you've then got an external socket. That is a 230 volt socket, and as I mentioned previously, that will only work when you are plugged into 230 volt mains electric. So when you're on your campsite or you have a 230 volt supply. Now that concludes the outside of the motorhome. We're now going to jump on to the inside. Okie dokie, so we're now on the inside of the motorhome. Just as you go through the habitation door, you'll notice you have got a fly screen which you can open once the door is open, and above that you've then got your control panel. So you've got your control panel for your heating on one side and your main control panel for pretty much everything else in the vehicle. So to turn this on, click the little power on button there, and you can see it brings you up the screen. So I'm just going to go through the options with you. Firstly, you've got your pump button. Click the pump on to obviously activate the pump. Now you only want to activate the pump when you've got fresh water in the vehicle. Never turn the pump on without any fresh water, because of course you do run the risk of burning the pump out after a prolonged period. So once you're on site, you're filled up with water, click your pump on. Once you've done that, you can go to all of your taps, including your bathroom tap and your shower, and what I'd recommend is turn them on and turn them to hot. What that will do is it will pull fresh water from the fresh water tank into the boiler and then out of the tap. It will spurt and splutter initially, and then when it's running steadily, you have primed your system for your hot water. Now that will take quite some time. It'll take a little bit longer than priming it on the cold water, because naturally it's got to come from the fresh water tank and then into the boiler. And your boiler in this motorhome will hold about 10 litres of fresh water, so it is going to take a little bit of time, so just be patient. But once that's running steadily, you have primed your system. And like I mentioned, once you've done that on hot, flick it over to cold, do the exact same on all your taps and your shower, and then again when that's running steadily, you've primed your system. Now, providing everything is then primed, you can actually leave your pump on, because on each of your taps you've got something called a micro switch, which will activate and deactivate the pump whenever you need it. So when you turn it on, it'll activate the pump, water will come out, and turn it off, it will deactivate the pump. The only time you need to turn that off, of course, is when you've run out of water. So coming back up to the control panel, next up we've got your awning light. So there's a little button on there that can turn the awning light on or off. The awning light is just a simple little light on the outside of the van. It's the door light, just to allow you in and out of the motorhome. You've then got your lighting for the inside of the vehicle. So if I click that, you can see that you've got 2 lights. You've got one for the rear and one for the front. Now the one at the front's off at the moment. If I click that, you can see that then turns these mood lighting and LED strips on. Now you can actually dim these, so these are dimmable. So if I click the minus button, you can see that is then lowering the brightness of the LEDs. It's a little bit difficult actually to see on the camera, but I can assure you it is. And the same thing goes for the rear lights as well, which is done through here. You've also got, whilst we're on the topic of the lighting, you've also got some little light switches dotted around underneath here. And you'll notice you've got a few more switches here for obviously the kitchen. You can turn them on and off providing your control panel is turned on. Going back into the home, next up you've then got your power. So if I click on the power, this is where it'll tell me all the information I need to know with regards to the leisure, the vehicle, and also what the solar is pulling in. So at the moment, the leisure battery is pretty much at 100%. It'll tell me the voltage and also the ampage. So you can see ampage is there and the voltage is just there. So we're not far off 100% there. Next to that, you've then got your solar regulator. So this is telling me how much it's currently pulling in. Now, it is a miserable day today and there's a few trees that are overhanging. So you can see the solar panel isn't really doing much at the moment. On the other side of that, you've then got your vehicle battery. So again, just like I said with the leisure, you can see your vehicle battery is reading 12.4 volts. That doesn't tell me the ampage, but it'll only tell you the voltage, which is only really only what you need. And then below that, you've actually got a little select battery. So you can click this to vehicle or leisure. Now, what I'd recommend is always leaving this on leisure. If you select vehicle, what could potentially happen is all your lights will be running off your vehicle battery. So that'll just simply kill and take all the power out of the vehicle battery. So you could potentially be stuck. It won't allow you to turn the engine on if you leave that on for a prolonged time. So I'd recommend always leaving it on the leisure battery. Next up, it then gives you your AC current when you're plugged in. You can set a limit as well if you wanted to. To be honest, this isn't really necessary, especially in the UK, but you can do. You've got the option of it just there. And using this button, you can flick and navigate through the options. Next up, if I click the home button, we've then got your water. So your water will tell me what's in the fresh tank and also what's in the waste tank. Currently, they're both reading 0%, so there's nothing in either tank. When you fill that up, of course, you'll get a reading on there to indicate. Now, underneath at the bottom here, you've got a couple of options. You've got your tank heaters, so if I turn them on, that will turn the heater on for the fresh and the waste water. So if you're using the vehicle in really cold conditions, especially in the colder climate, click your tank heaters on, and that will just ensure that nothing is frozen or it freezes, overnight when you're using the motorhome. You've then got level alerts here, so you can select that and select a level that you want it to alert you at. To be honest, it's you'll be able to pretty quickly get to grips with this and see how easy it is just to select that. So I don't even think that's really necessary, but if you wanted to, you can select that. Got the same thing with frost alerts as well, which is quite useful. So if it's a certain temperature outside, you can select frost alerts on. It will warn you, and then you'll think, perfect, I need to turn my tank heaters on. So that's pretty useful to have. And you can just click that by clicking this button here at the bottom. Next to that, you've then got the power buttons to allow you to empty your fresh and your waste. As I mentioned, this is all done electrically. So all you've got to do is click this button. You can confirm that. I won't do that yet because there's nothing in it, but that will open and drain down your fresh. And then you can see it's the same thing for the empty the waste. I click that, it says empty waste, confirm, and that will empty your waste. I'll just click cancel on there for now because we don't need it, but it's simple as that. Next up, you've then got your heating button. Now, I'm going to talk you through the heating using this panel. I personally find it's a lot better and easier to navigate on this panel rather than using Swift system, which is integrated. So it's up to you which you wanted to use, but I personally do it all through this panel here. It's a little bit easier. Below, you've then got your settings panel. So you can change obviously the date, the time, the brightness of the screen and things like that. And then finally, you've also got the option of running your fridge off this. Again, I personally prefer running all the system directly off the fridge because there's some controls just on the top there. I prefer it navigating through there. I think it's a lot easier, so I'm going to show you on there. But if you did want to, you could run it through the control panel itself. And that is the main control panel for the vehicle. Dead easy, dead simple. Next to that, you've also got a temperature sensor, which links to your Truma control panel, which will obviously regulate the internal temperature. Now, to operate your heating, this uses a Truma Combi 6C boiler. Now, you can either run it off electric, gas, or a combination of both, and that's the reason it's called a combi boiler, really. So to turn this on, simply select this button and hold it, and then you're met with the home screen. So everything below the line is what you want to select, and using this dial you can flick between the options. So firstly, if I click this button, you've got your vehicle's temperature. So this is for the vehicle heating. Now you can take this all the way up to 30 degrees should you want to. Next up is then your water heating. So you can run this off either Eco, Hot or Boost. Eco is approximately 40 degrees. Hot is approximately 60 degrees. And Boost will concentrate on, rather than heating the vehicle itself, it will concentrate on heating the water. Now, just bear in mind it will only do that for about half an hour. So just be mindful of that. Next up, you've then got your fuel. So this is where you select what you want the boiler to run off. So you can either have it on EL1 or EL2. So EL2 is 2 kilowatt electric, EL1 is 1 kilowatt electric. You can run it off Mix 2, which is a mixture of gas and 2 kilowatt electric. Mix 1, which is a mixture of gas and 1 kilowatt electric, or purely gas. So when you're wild camping, you'll probably you'll run it off gas. If you are supplied with low power or low voltage on the site, you may have to run it off Mix 1, which is a mixture of gas and, as I say, 1 kilowatt electric. And Mix 2 is typically used if you find that it is a really cool day and the electric is struggling by itself to heat up the water in the vehicle. If you stick it on Mix 2, it will run, it's a little bit more efficient, and also it will heat that water up and the vehicle a lot quicker. So going back to this, as I say, EL2, EL1, Mix 2, Mix 1 and gas. So the EL1 and EL2 is really just used for when you're plugged in on your campsite. Majority of the time, if you're plugged in, you're going to run it off EL2. If you are forced to run it off EL1, which tends to happen when you go abroad due to the power supply you're supplied with on the campsite, I'd recommend, like I say, sticking it on Mix 1 or purely gas, because a vehicle of this size, combined with the fact that you've got to heat your water off just 1 kilowatt electric, it's not going to do a great deal, so just bear that in mind. Now, coming back out of there, you've then got the option of fan. So if I click that, at the moment it's giving me the option of vent. That will recirculate the air in the motorhome. So if it's quite a hot day, you can stick it on vent should you want to. But if I was to select a temperature of these, it will then allow me to select either Eco or High. Eco will obviously turn the fan on, and High will be a more intensified version of that. And that's for the vehicle heating, not the water heating. Below, you can then set a timer should you want to. So you can set a timer of when you want the heating to kick in. So if you've gone for a walk and you want the heating on before you come back, you can allow it to do so. So you can just set that timer. You've then got a little clock here, so you can change the time displayed on the panel. And then finally, you've got your settings panel here, which if I go all the way through, you've got your reset at the bottom. That's the only thing you really need to know in the settings panel. And you'll need to reset the panel if you ever get an error code displayed on here. Now, you'll tend to get an error code for if you have selected the wrong fuel. So, for example, I'm not connected to gas at the moment. If I was to turn this panel on, turn the heating on and run it off gas, I'll get an error code. Because in essence, it's trying to power the boiler with something that it's not got. So to protect itself, you'll get an error code. When you get that error code, all you'll need to do is go into the settings panel, click on the reset, it'll say preset, click that again, and then the screen will go off, it'll start flickering and initializing, and then it'll come back on, and that's how you reset it. Now after about 20 to 30 seconds, that screen will come back on and it'll look like it's back up and running. However, you do need to wait a full 20 minutes for that to completely reset. So just bear that in mind. But yeah, if you can avoid it, obviously, always try and make sure that you select the right fuel, because obviously it's a bit of a pain having to reset it every time. But if you do forget and you do select the wrong fuel, or perhaps you've not pulled water into the boiler and you're trying to heat it for the water, you'll get the error code. You just reset it through the panel, so it's dead easy. To turn this off, all you've got to do is hold this button, just like so, and eventually it will say off. I always recommend turning this off before, say for example you're running this off electric, always turn this off before removing the electric mains plug on the outside of the vehicle, because if you don't, again, next time you come to use this, you'll get an error code and you'll have to reset it. So always turn that off before you remove anything from the van, either switching the gas off or taking the electric hookup cable out of the vehicle. And that concludes your control panel up here. So moving around, you can see next up we've got your kitchen area. So you've got your oven and grill here. This is a Thetford oven. Here you've got your hob, which is run by gas. And like I say, your oven and grill, which is just below. You've also got a great bit of storage in this motorhome, as you can see, which is nice and accessible. And you've also got an additional bit of worktop space, which you can just pull up and let that connect into place. Now we've spoken obviously about priming the system for the hot water and the tap, so you're all right with that. And then underneath here, again in the kitchen area, you can see that you've got a really good bit of storage. Now it's a little bit difficult to see on the camera because it's obviously a bit dark, but in here you've actually got some taps. I don't know whether you can see where my finger is there. So there's some little valves here which will allow you to isolate areas of the vehicle. These are isolation taps. Now I personally don't recommend using these. These are really only there for the technician. They allow us to isolate certain areas of the vehicle when running it off gas and electric and things like that. So leave them as they are, but just so you know, they are your isolation valves. Above, you've then got your 230 volt microwave. This will only work when you're plugged into 230 volt, by the way. Like I mentioned on the outside, you do need to be plugged into mains electric for that to operate. Same thing for your plugs. And then in here, a little bit more storage, and I've got where all your packs are and everything related to the motorhome. So turning around, you've got a little bit more storage here. Now we'll come back to the area which is located in here, but I just want to talk you through the Dometic fridge. So to turn the fridge on, all you've got to do is hold this button, and you can see by the lights coming on, it will turn the fridge on. Now I'm just going to turn that off for the time being because it's trying to fuel it with gas, but I've not got that at the moment, so I don't want an error code. So to operate the fridge, hold that button as I've shown you, your lights will come on. All you've got to do then is hold the mode button. The lights will start flashing, and then just click the mode to change which setting you want it on. So to talk you through the settings, you've got firstly a little leisure battery or battery icon here. You've then got a little flame icon, and you've also got a little 230 volt plug icon. So when you're traveling, you can run this fridge off 12 volt power, which is this little battery icon. When you're wild camping, you can run this off your gas. And then when you're plugged into mains electric, you can run it off this 230 volt plug. Now, a lot of people think that when you're wild camping, you can run this fridge off 12 volts. That's not the case, unfortunately. It won't work. The reason for it is this draws so much power, it would just leave you without any, basically any power whatsoever. So you need to make sure that when you're traveling, this is on your 12 volts, and then when you're stationary, you run it off your gas. And of course, when you're plugged in, you simply run it off your 230 volt. Now, the reason why this fridge can run off your 12 volt when you're traveling is this particular vehicle is fitted with an alternator. So when your engine battery is running, that will send a charge and a feed straight through to the alternator, leading to your leisure battery, which will then power your fridge. So just bear that in mind. Now, the great thing with this is this has got a little auto button here, which you can select. If you select that on auto, which it is currently set to, that will automatically assign whichever fuel you've got. Now, if you've got no fuel, like, you know, I've not got the engine running, I've no electric, I've no gas, it will automatically set to gas as a default. But, you know, depending whichever one you've got, it will select for you. So just leave it on auto and you shouldn't run into any issues. If it does try and, you know, power the fridge with something, you might potentially need to reset the fridge again, similar to the heating. So just hold that little, this triangle mark, and that will reset the fridge. Underneath the mode button, you've then got the option to change the temperature. So hold this, and again, you can change the temperature of the fridge. And opening the fridge up, you've got your freezer up at the top, and of course the fridge below. What I'd recommend is with the freezer, put frozen things in there, and for the fridge, put cold things in there, as it does a really good job at maintaining the temperature of things. But especially on a hot day, it can struggle on getting the temperature down. So just bear that in mind. And then again, underneath, you've got a little bit more storage for the fridge. Now coming back up and opening this up, you can see, like I mentioned, you've got your aerial in here. This is for your TV. So for your aerial, all you've got to do when you want to use it is simply turn this white ring here to release the aerial, and then you can push the aerial up and then tighten that into position. And that will better your signal. Now you can actually turn this aerial around, so you can move it, so you can point it to whichever way gives you the best signal. And you've also got a little arm here which will allow you to wind and tilt the aerial head again to improve your signal. Please remember when travelling to unscrew this and to pull this down and then tighten that into position like so, ready for travelling. You don't want to be setting off with that aerial all the way up. Now in the next cupboard along, you've got your aerial box here, so you can turn this on and off. Now I'd probably just leave this on. As you can see, that blue light indicates that the aerial is on, so you can turn that on there and that indicates that it's on and it's working. You have got a little dial here as well to improve the signal, again depending on where you are. Now whilst we have this open, you can see that you've got a table here which is freestanding, so you can use this in this rear section here. And you've also got some infill cushions for your makeup bed, which I'll show you just shortly. You've also got another little bit of worktop space here that actually connects onto the table on the side and will give you a little bit more worktop space and when you're sitting around it. Okie dokie, so now moving on, you can see that we're at the back of the vehicle. You've got a really nice L-shaped lounge here, or U-shaped lounge rather, and then up at the top you've got a really good bit of storage. For your U-shaped lounge, this of course doubles up as your main bed for the vehicle, and it is dead easy to use and to assemble. All you've got to do is turn the little clip here that will release this, and as you can see, you can then pull the bed with the bed slats attached all the way across. That will then form the base of the bed, and then using these infill cushions, you can slide these into position. They simply meet in the middle, the backrests drop down, and you're left with a really good sized bed. And as you can see, I've just pulled them across using one of the infill cushions that just slots into here, and it allows you to have a really nice sized bed. What I'd personally recommend is using a mattress topper that will just take the grooves out of the cushions here just to make it a little bit more level. And I'd probably even flip these around because it's just a flatter surface, again just to better the surface. But it's just like that, dead simple, dead easy, makes for a huge bed. Now underneath your two bench seats, you've got obviously a little bit of storage on the one side which you can access from a locker, and then you've got some internal storage underneath this seat base here. In the corner you've then got your boiler. This leads us on to our final drain down point, which is again really important. You need to of course drain down the boiler. To drain down the boiler, all you've got to do is flick this yellow tab up. So at the moment it's in the up position, as you can see. Point the camera down here, be a little bit easier. So you can see in the up position it is open, and then flick it down to close it. So when you want to use the boiler and you're using the motorhome, you need to ensure that that yellow tab is flicked down. That will complete the circuit and seal the unit, allowing you to flow the water through the boiler and prime the system. And then when you're not using the vehicle, simply press that up. So when you've stopped using it, drain this by flicking it up along with your fresh and waste water drain down points, and then drain that on site and simply leave them open, so then when you're travelling home, all your water comes out the vehicle. And then when using it, just flick it down like so. Now I am going to leave that up for the time being because we are starting to head into the colder months and I don't want any water to freeze in there should anything be pulled through. So I'm going to leave that up and open for you, but it's just as simple as that. Just flick that up just to drain it and flick it down to seal it. And just like that, your lounge is back together again. Now, before I move away and go back into the front of the motorhome, you've got windows which are all surrounded along the back. To open these up, you need to press the plastic tab and pull all these tabs open, and then you can then release the window and push it open. You've got these little knobs which will then set it into place, so you just need to tighten that in, so that will hold the window once it's out. Obviously I'm not going to do so at the moment because it's absolutely chucking it down, but simply turn that, tighten them into position, and then all your windows will be open. But again, like I mentioned with the aerial, you do need to ensure that these are all sealed before travelling. So all you've got to do, again, press that, slide that like so, and let that connect in. You can actually put these windows on venting, so a little bit of airflow comes through, but I recommend always ensuring that these are sealed before you're travelling, because you don't want any wind getting underneath there. The same goes for your skylights as well. Now you can open this by simply pressing this in and sliding this back, but again, because it's chucking it down, I won't do that. But you can see that is then linked back into place, and then you're good to go. On your skylights and also your windows, you've got blackout blinds and also fly screens for when you're using it in the summer. So moving away from the lounge and going into the bathroom area, you can see that in the bathroom you have got this nylon sheet or shower curtain that will pull across to protect the door for when you are using the shower. Your shower head actually doubles as your tap, so if you want to use it as the shower, simply pull this out and that will then connect onto here, and then you can use the shower. Now the main thing that I need to speak to you about is obviously the toilet. Now, like I mentioned on the outside, you've got something called a blade on the toilet. The blade that I keep referring to is this piece of plastic here. If I pull that towards me, it will open the blade. With the blade open, all the waste can drop into the cassette. Once you've done that, you can click the blue button, which is on the top there. That will release the flush, and that will flush the system. Once you've done that, close the cassette. You close the cassette for two reasons. One, the main reason is it will get you into the habit of having that closed, so when you come to remove the cassette, you won't break or damage the cassette mechanism or the float. And then the second reason is it will stop any odours from escaping from the cassette. So once you've done it, close it, and then you're good to go. Now, it does bear in mind that you will need your pump on for this to operate, for your flush, but just click that and then it will allow you to flush the system. And when the cassette is nearly full, you'll get a little red light indicated on here to let you know that you need to empty it. Okie dokie, so as you can see, we are now in the front lounge. Above your front lounge, you have got a manual drop-down bed. To operate this, all you'll need to do is push this in, this button, make sure that all the tabs, so you've got these security tabs here, make sure that they're all unplugged or you know, not tied into anything, and then you can drop the bed. I'll do that for you now. And as you can see, just like that, your drop-down bed is ready to use. Now you have a couple of options with this. So when you take the bed down, you need to push it up in the centre to disengage it off the L bracket. You can then push this in, and that will then allow you to pull it down. There's two settings with this, so you can either have it at the half setting, where you get some ladders and you can go up on the bed. That's really if you're using this area as well as a bed. But if there is only two people staying here, you can actually take it a little bit lower. I'll show you that now. As you can see, the bed is a little bit lower now, a little bit easier to access, gives you a little bit more head height as well. And that's really for using it when there's just two at the front and no one underneath, because it doesn't give you a great deal of space underneath for when you wanted to use it. Once you're done with it, just press that button all the way up and let that lock into the L plate. You can leave all your bedding on here. I'd personally recommend with your pillows sticking them at the front, because if you obviously have a lot of pressure underneath there with the pillows up against the roof, it could potentially snap a bracket or anything if you're forcing it. So I'd take your pillows out and put them at the front, but everything else can stay on. Now below, you've obviously got your lounge area. So you've firstly got this table, which is telescopic, so you can move it up and down and side to side and all the way around. So you've got quite a bit of play in this. You've got 2 belted seats here, and you've also got a 5th travelling seat, which is just here. To turn this into a 5th travelling seat, you need to remove these cushions. You've then got your little base that slides all the way in, and then you can face someone, you can seat someone rear facing. To use this corner bench, all you've got to do is remove this. That insert pulls out. The little slide out wood slots in, so then the passenger's legs can then drop down into there and you can face forward. So it's as simple as that. So as you can see with this 5th travelling seat, I've just slid the bottom into position. That then pulls across, slots onto there. You can then put the foam base back into position like so. And then you've got your backrest there for your 5th travelling seat. Okie dokie, with that made up, next up leaves the bed. So to make that up, it is dead simple. You can see this little piece here, I've just pulled that out of the back as I showed you earlier. Now this connects into here, into this table. You can see there's 2 little grooves here where they just line up. And then you've got a little centre catch here that just secures it. So you can either use this as, obviously, as a big table, like I mentioned, but you do need it to create this into a bed. So take that and slot that onto the table. And just like that, this extended piece is now connected onto the table. You then need to go below the table, and on the other side you can see that you've got that lever. You need to pull that lever across, and that will then allow you to drop the table into position. And then pull that lever back up, and that will lock the table in its lower position. I'll do that for you now. As you can see, that is now locked into position and is ready for the base. You've then got this little lip here, which is the little wooden insert which is over there. That actually connects into there and slots onto there and fills in this base here. As you can see, that board is then slotted onto the top there and connects into here. And then it's just a case of rearranging your cushions. So these will pull forward, these will slot in, and then your infill cushions will go down the middle. I'll do that for you now. As you can see, that is where your bed makes up from. So all I've done is I've removed the backrests off here, slotted them in the middle, using the infill in the back drawer. That slots directly into the middle here. You've then got the backrests from here, they slot into there and complete the bed makeup. It's dead easy. Again, you may want to use a mattress topper just to slot over here. It will just take the grooves out of the cushions, and then you've got your full double bed, which is completely usable. And just like that, the lounge is back together again. I've just popped the table back up. I've stored all them little bits that you saw just in that rear cupboard, and you're away. Finally, before we conclude today's handover video, you will notice you've also got these added screens. These actually link onto the press studs, and they double up as blackout blinds, which you've already got obviously as part of the Remis cab blinds I've shown you, but they also insulate the front window. So if it is a really cold day or even a hot day, you can stick them in the front window. They will deflect the sunlight but also insulate the inside of the vehicle. So that concludes today's handover video on the Swift Escape 674. I hope you enjoyed.